All right, let's dive in. This time we're taking a look at Night of the Big Heat, that British sci-fi horror flick from '67. You know, the one with the island and the crazy heat wave.
Yeah.
The source material you sent over, it hints at something more going on, like more than just a typical monster movie, you know?
Right. It's got that classic thriller setup, but it's how Terence Fisher uses the island setting, the director, how he makes it this isolated, almost vulnerable place. That's what gets interesting. The heat, it's almost like its own character.
So you're saying it's not just like literal heat we're talking about. It's a symbol for something else, maybe like societal anxieties or even inner demons?
Yeah, exactly. It's like this breakdown of order within the individual and the community. Imagine the whole island is like a pressure cooker, right? And all the anxieties, the hidden desires, they just keep building.
It makes me think of films like Lord of the Flies, even The Shining, being cut off, isolated. It's like it brings out these primal instincts, exposes all our weaknesses.
Absolutely. And in Night of the Big Heat, it's even weirder because the mainland's totally fine. Just this island picked up, like it's the stage for this, I don't know, cosmic play or something.
So it's not just surviving the heat, but confronting something bigger, something they don't understand.
That's it. And that's the classic sci-fi connection. That fear of the unknown, the thought of something out there just beyond our reach, controlling things.
Speaking of out there, we can't forget the stars of the show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing,
Yeah.
those two instantly elevate it. Makes it more than your run-of-the-mill monster flick.
Totally. They bring this weight to the film, even if the special effects aren't exactly, top-notch by today's standards. Lee, as Dr. Hanson, he's got that scientific curiosity, that drive to understand, even if it puts him in danger.
And Cushing, he's like the opposite, right? That voice of reason, grounded, even amidst all this chaos. You've got that classic battle between faith and reason, instinct and logic. It's what keeps the story moving.
Exactly. And their whole dynamic, it highlights another theme, that line between scientific progress and ethics. Responsibility. What Hanson's doing, trying to figure out the heat wave, it could backfire, for him, for everyone on the island.
Makes you think about ambition, right? How the pursuit of knowledge, it can sometimes blind you to the consequences.
And that's where the social commentary kicks in. It's a reflection of the Cold War, all that anxiety about science, the bomb, that heat. It's like a metaphor for the dread everyone was feeling back then.
It's wild how a film from '67 can still speak to us now, Maybe not the threat of nuclear war exactly, but we've got climate change, pandemics, makes you question things, your place in the world, all that.
It does, doesn't it? And Night of the Big Heat, it reminds us those big questions. They never really go away. They're universal.
Something the source material mentions. The film's ties to mythology, classic literature. I'm curious, how does this sci-fi thriller tap into those bigger ideas, those archetypes?
Well, think about the island itself. It's not just a place, it's a symbol, right? Isolation, physically, mentally, it's like a crucible, stripping everyone bare, showing their true nature, like in The Tempest or Heart of Darkness, that idea of the island changing people, society.
And then there's the fire motif,
Yeah.
right? Not just a danger, but a symbol. Purification, destruction, transformation. It consumes and creates. Like it mirrors what's happening inside the characters, the potential for chaos, but also renewal.
Exactly. And that use of fire visually, it's intentional. Terence Fisher, he loved his gothic horror, right? Deep shadow, stark lighting, all those contrasts, creating this mood, this unease.
It's like the visuals themselves reflect the psychology, the heat warping, how they see things through reality. Almost like stepping into this surreal dream where logic is fading, replaced by instinct and fear.
Exactly. That blurring between real and dreamlike, that's classic psychological thriller stuff, right? He's crafted it masterfully, and you see it here too, adding another layer to how the film looks, what it's saying.
It's not just what we see, but what's hidden, unspoken. The anxiety, the desire, all simmering just below the surface.
Yeah, and that psychological depth, that's what makes Night of the Big Heat more than a monster movie. It's an invitation to look beyond the literal threat, the aliens, and see those bigger anxieties, what it means to be human.
Now, I'm curious about the whole cult British cinema thing. What makes this type of filmmaking so interesting?
Well, cult British cinema, it's all about those films, often quirky, offbeat, sometimes low budget even. Maybe they didn't hit it big when they came out, but they find this dedicated audience,
They dare to be different, break the rules, explore those unconventional themes.
Yeah. And Night of the Big Heat fits right in. It's unsettling, thought-provoking, this unique blend of sci-fi, horror, and psychological stuff. Very British,
It's like they took that classic Hammer horror feel and gave it this cosmic twist. Familiar, but strange. unsettling.
Exactly. That mix of familiar and unknown, grounded and surreal, it's what makes it so captivating. It speaks to our deepest fears while also making us question what we see, embrace those mysteries out there.
Well, I'm hooked. Can't wait to uncover more of this cosmic mystery. But for now, I think we need to give our listeners a moment to process all this.
Good idea. We've covered quite a bit in this first dive, haven't we? The plot, the characters, the themes, the visuals, the psychological aspects.
And there's still so much more to explore, right? The aliens themselves, how it all ends. So be sure to join us for part 2 of our Night of the Big Heat deep dive. We'll keep unraveling those layers, uncover what's lurking beneath.
Until then, keep those heat lamps burning and those imaginations fired up. All right, welcome back to our deep dive into Night of the Big Heat. Remember all that symbolism, the psychological stuff we were talking about? Well, now it's time to really face the heat, see what happens when they actually confront the unknown.
Yeah, I'm ready for things to boil over.
Yes.
Last time we were discussing how the film builds suspense with its atmosphere. So how does that play out at the end?
Well, the climax, it all goes down during this stormy night, which kind of reflects everything that's going on, both with the characters, their inner turmoil, and the environment itself. The heat's at its peak, the islanders are on edge, and all their fears and suspicions, it's like they're reaching a boiling point.
So the storm, it's like a physical representation of what's happening in their minds, that psychological storm.
Exactly. You've got wind howling, rain pouring down, and then boom, the power goes out. The whole island plunges into darkness. All these senses heightened, disorienting the characters, the viewers too. Reality and nightmare, those lines start to blur.
That disorientation, that feeling of losing control, that's classic horror, right? It taps into those primal fears, the unknown, the things we can't predict.
Absolutely. And Terence Fisher, the director, he uses it brilliantly. Light and shadow, flickering candles, those flashes of lightning illuminating their faces. You see their fear, their desperation.
He's almost like a painter, using light and shadow to show us what's going on inside them, their inner turmoil.
And that visual storytelling, it's amplified by the sound. The fire crackling, the wind howling, thunder rumbling in the distance. It all adds to the unease, keeps the audience on edge.
It's amazing, right? How these small details, they can have such a big impact. It's not just what you see, but what you hear, what you feel. You're totally immersed in the film.
That's exactly what makes Night of the Big Heat so powerful. It engages all your senses, draws you into this world, this claustrophobic world where reality and nightmare are constantly shifting.
So how do the characters cope with all this? With the surrealism, the danger? Do they give in to their fear, or do they find a way to fight back?
Well, you see different responses, which I guess reflects how complex people are under pressure. Some, like Angela, the young woman caught in the love triangle, she just freezes. She can't handle the chaos.
She's vulnerable, right? Her emotions are fragile, almost like a warning sign, a barometer for how tense and dangerous things are becoming.
That's a great way to put it. The way she falls apart, it shows the psychological toll this is taking on everyone. Then you have characters like Jeff, the innkeeper. He tries to keep things together, but he eventually cracks, gives in to those primal instincts, wanting to protect the people he cares about, even if it means doing things that aren't exactly, morally right.
It shows that even someone who seems rational, level-headed, can be pushed to their limits. It's that classic idea that the two sides of human nature, right, our best intentions versus those base instincts.
Exactly. And then there's Dr. Hanson. He never wavers. He's still obsessed with figuring out the aliens, even when everything's spiraling out of control. That desire for knowledge, refusing to be afraid, it makes him admirable, but also kind of tragic.
It's that classic archetype, right? The one who dares to seek knowledge, even if there are consequences, things he can't control, like Prometheus.
That's a really interesting connection. And his pursuit of knowledge, it leads to the final confrontation with the aliens. It's visually striking and really resonates with the film's themes.
Okay, now I'm really on the edge of my seat. Without spoiling anything, can you at least hint at what happens in this scene? How does it fit into the film's overall message?
Of course. So, picture this. It's the middle of the storm, like nature itself is reflecting the chaos, the uncertainty. The aliens, we haven't really seen them up to this point, but now they finally appear. But not in the way you'd expect.
So not those typical bug-eyed creatures. It's something more nuanced, something that messes with your head more.
Right. The special effects, they weren't great, even for back then. But you know what? It actually adds to the mystery, the fear. The aliens are shown through light, shadow, suggestion. It lets your imagination fill in the gaps.
Like we were talking about earlier, less is more. Sometimes what you don't see is more terrifying.
Exactly. And that approach, it fits perfectly with the whole focus on psychology and symbolism. The aliens, they're not just a physical threat, they represent the unknown. The things we can't understand that disrupt our world, challenge how we see reality.
Their presence is what pushes the characters over the edge, makes them confront their deepest fears.
Yeah, that's it. And the ending, while it does provide some closure, it also leaves you with questions, like, what were the aliens really doing here? What does it mean for humanity? It's a reminder that some things are better left unexplained. Sometimes trying to understand the universe just leads to more questions.
It's like the real horror isn't the monsters, but realizing how little we know, how we can't grasp the vastness of the cosmos.
That's a really profound thought, and it speaks to why Night of the Big Heat is still so powerful. It's not just about aliens, it's about human nature, our relationship with the unknown, and those existential anxieties we all have.
It's the kind of film that sticks with you, makes you question things, look inward, and maybe even look up at the stars with a new sense of, wonder and fear at the same time.
Beautifully put. That's what makes a truly great film, right? It goes beyond genre, explores what it means to be human in a way that's timeless and speaks to everyone.
So for viewers who enjoyed Night of the Big Heat's mix of psychological tension, social commentary, and cosmic horror, are there other films you'd recommend?
Oh, absolutely. If you like the suspense, the feeling of isolation and paranoia, check out Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Both versions, the original from '56 and the remake in '78, they capture that Cold War fear of conformity, losing your individuality. The alien invasion, it's really a metaphor for those societal anxieties.
Oh yeah, those are classics. The idea of being replaced, losing yourself in a world where everyone's the same, it's chilling. It still feels relevant today.
Exactly. And if you're drawn to Night of the Big Heat's ambiguous ending and that sense of cosmic forces at play, then you should delve into John Carpenter's films. Specifically, The Thing and Prince of Darkness. They embrace the unknown, the things we can't explain, and they leave you feeling unsettled, questioning everything.
Oh, The Thing. That shape-shifting alien, the paranoia in that isolated setting. Yeah, that's a perfect set. And Prince of Darkness, I've heard it's one of Carpenter's creepiest films, dealing with ancient evil and the potential for humanity to destroy itself.
Exactly. Both films, like Night of the Big Heat, challenge how we see the universe and our place in it. They remind us that the most terrifying things might not be the monsters, but realizing how fragile we are, how vast and mysterious the unknown really is.
It seems like there's a whole bunch of films out there exploring these themes, these existential anxieties that have been around for centuries.
You're right. And Night of the Big Heat is a great example of that type of sci-fi. It's really stuck with people.
I think we've really gotten to the heart of this film, haven't we? We talked about the symbolism, the psychological depth, its impact on the genre. But before we finish, I want to circle back to cult British cinema.
That's a great way to wrap things up. As we mentioned, Night of the Big Heat embodies a lot of what defines this subgenre. It's both quintessentially British and relatable to anyone, anywhere. That mix of gothic horror, sci-fi intrigue, psychological suspense, it's a potent combination.
Yeah, it might not have been a blockbuster, but it's found its audience over the years. The cinematography, the themes, the chemistry between Lee and Cushing, it all adds up.
Exactly. And its influence can be seen in so many other films that came after. Filmmakers who took that same approach to storytelling, focusing on the psychology of the characters, exploring those anxieties we all share.
Well said. So on that note of cosmic chills and existential pondering, I think it's time to wrap up this part of our dive. But don't worry, our exploration of Night of the Big Heat isn't over yet.
Be sure to join us for the final part of our discussion, where we'll unravel the film's ending, talk about its impact on popular culture, and see how it holds up in today's world, which is maybe even more complex and unpredictable than back in '67.
Until then, keep those imaginations burning bright.
Ooh.
Welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into Night of the Big Heat. We've been through the ringer with this one, haven't we? Isolation, paranoia, facing the unknown, the whole shebang. So now I'm really curious, how does it all wrap up?
Well, the ending, it's not simple, that's for sure. It fits with the whole feel of the film, thought-provoking, makes you think. It doesn't tie everything up in a neat little bow, more like leaves you pondering the big stuff, the universe, our place in it.
You keep saying the ending is ambiguous. Can you, expand on that a bit without spoiling it? What makes it so interesting for viewers?
Well, it's like this. The film never spells out exactly what the aliens want or what ultimately happens to them. We see the effects, the chaos they cause, but their whole purpose, their motivations, It's left kind of mysterious.
It's like the real horror isn't some monster, but realizing we might never fully understand those forces out there in the universe, right?
That's it. That existential uncertainty, that mix of awe and dread about the cosmos. It's something people have felt for centuries. The film confronts us with the limits of our knowledge, makes us accept that some questions just don't have clear answers.
It's a powerful message, especially today, when everyone wants instant answers, easy solutions. It's a good reminder that there's something both beautiful and terrifying about the unknown, those mysteries we may never solve.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes Night of the Big Heat so compelling. It doesn't just give you all the answers. It wants you to engage with the film, come up with your own interpretation, wrestle with those philosophical questions it raises.
It makes you think critically, connect the dots between the symbolism, the psychology, the social commentary. It's a film that demands your attention, doesn't it?
Right. And that act of viewing, it's reinforced by the way the film looks, its visual storytelling. Those final scenes, they're full of these powerful images that stick with you. Think about the fire, for instance.
Yeah, the fire. More than just danger, right? It's about purification, destruction, change.
Exactly. And at the very end, fire plays this key role, literally and figuratively. It represents the destructive power of the unknown, but also the potential for renewal, for starting fresh.
Almost like saying, even when things are chaotic, there's that flicker of hope, a chance for rebirth, transformation.
That's a great way to see it. And that sense of hope, even if it's fragile, that's what makes Night of the Big Heat more than just an alien invasion story. It's about resilience, confronting our fears, finding meaning, even when things are uncertain.
So this film, with its ambiguous ending, its cosmic horror, where does it fit in with other British films? We've been talking about cult British cinema. Can you unpack that a bit? Explain why Night of the Big Heat belongs in that category?
Okay, so cult British cinema. Think of films that might not have been huge hits right away, but over time, they find this dedicated audience. They've got this mix of style, substance, and maybe even a bit of quirkiness. They tend to delve into darker, unconventional themes. They don't play it safe.
They're not afraid to be different, break the mold.
Yeah. And Night of the Big Heat totally fits that. It's atmospheric, thought-provoking, this unique blend of sci-fi, horror, and psychological stuff, all very British in its own way. It might not be for everyone, but those who appreciate those subtle chills, the exploration of human nature's dark side, they'll really get into it.
It's like those films that become cult classics. They have the staying power. They make you think, they invite different interpretations, and they can even feel relevant years later.
Absolutely. And I think Night of the Big Heat has that. It sticks with you, makes you analyze the themes, the symbols, those haunting images.
You know, something that's always struck me as interesting, you've mentioned how the film's limited special effects actually make it more effective. That seems kind of counterintuitive, especially for a genre that often relies on spectacle.
Well, by relying on suggestion, on implying things rather than showing everything, it actually creates more dread, more mystery. The aliens, they're a great example. We never see them clearly. Their true form is left to our imagination.
That less is more idea again. Our own fears fill in the gaps.
Exactly. And it works particularly well in Night of the Big Heat because the film's so focused on psychology. It's all about the characters' inner struggles, their descent into paranoia, their fear, and that's way scarier than any monster you can put on screen.
The real horror is internal, inside us.
Precisely. And that emphasis on the psychological, on what's going on inside rather than just the external stuff, that's what makes good horror, good sci-fi, truly lasting. It taps into these primal fears, anxieties that are universal, timeless.
As we wrap things up, what would you say is the lasting impact of Night of the Big Heat? How has it influenced other films, how we see alien encounters?
Oh, its influence is huge. Think about all the filmmakers who've taken cues from its atmospheric style, its focus on psychological tension, its way of exploring the unknown. It helped open the door for more nuanced, more thought-provoking stories about alien contact. It's not just a simple good versus evil thing anymore.
It's about the complexities of alien contact, the moral questions, the potential for both wonder and terror.
Right. And that shift in perspective, that willingness to explore the gray areas, you can see it in films like Close Encounters, Contact, Arrival. They all owe something to films like Night of the Big Heat.
It's amazing how a film from over 50 years ago can still resonate, inspire new conversations, new ways of thinking about our place in the universe.
It shows you the power of a good story, doesn't it? Great storytelling transcends time, speaks to something fundamental about being human. It stays relevant, makes you think, no matter how much the world changes.
I think we've come to the end of our journey into Night of the Big Heat. We've covered so much. The plot, characters, themes, the visuals, psychology, its lasting influence.
We really peeled back the layers, got to the core of what makes this such a fascinating, enduring film.
So to our listeners, if you're intrigued, go find Night of the Big Heat and experience it for yourself. You might be surprised how much this classic sci-fi thriller has to say about our world today, about our anxieties and our never-ending fascination with what lies beyond.
On that note of cosmic mystery and those big existential questions, we'll say goodbye. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep those imaginations fired up.
Happy viewing.